Hey, good morning guys. Aaron Kubis, personal trainer at Functional Aesthetics EC. So in recent years, formerly more extreme dietary practices such as intermittent fasting and keto have come to the forefront, and more of the national awareness as far as viable methods for not only losing weight but improving your health, improving your efficiency. So in this video, I want to go over a few tips that you can implement to make sure you're getting the most out of your intermittent fasting routine. Because simply just not eating for a period of time and then eating is not really intermittent fasting. Yes, you're not eating for a period of time, so you're fasting, but it's not necessarily going to lead to the results that most people are looking for, which is weight loss. So looking at the board here, we got number one, health is one reason that you might choose to fast. Number two, convenience, and we'll get more into in more depth in these a little later on in the video. And then thirdly, and probably the most popular reason why people do intermittent fasting, would be weight loss. So we will start off with the health benefits in the next clip. Okay, so the health benefits of fasting are pretty numerous. So we have right here, number one, autophagy. And what autophagy is basically cell death and then regeneration. So if you go for 24 hours, and this isn't necessarily intermittent fasting, this is actually more related to actual prolonged fasting. So if you go for 24 hours without eating, after 24 hours, your white blood cells actually begin to die off. And you might think, well, this is a bad thing. We don't want, the white blood cells to die off because that's, what our immune system is, right? However, they die off, and then your body creates brand new white blood cells. So for this reason, you can actually improve your immune system through this processes of autophagy. The other thing that happens is healing the gut. So by regenerating the cells, breaking down stuff, and then healing the gut lining, by giving your body that chance to rest from digesting food and processing food, you actually allow those cells to break down, die, regenerate, create new ones. The other thing is decreasing blood sugar levels. So a lot of people who are pre-diabetic or even diabetic, they go on a fasting routine, and simply fasting helps them get off of their insulin, off of their medications and stuff, because it improves your insulin sensitivity. Now we're going to get into how to gradually get into fasting, because obviously if you're diabetic, you wouldn't just want to go cold turkey, right into it and stuff, but ways to get into there to improve that. So the other one is decreased inflammation. So when you are taking in a lot of processed sugars, a lot of grains, too much food and stuff like that, you can tend to get inflammation in the body. Otherwise, also if you have inflammation for other reasons, this can also help decrease that inflammation as well. And inflammation is linked to a lot of different chronic, or not chronic, but degenerative diseases that are not something that you not communicable diseases, but things like heart disease, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and all these different things like that. So if you decrease the inflammation, cancer also, decreasing that inflammation is going to reduce your chances of developing cancer as well. So now we'll move on from the health thing. Obviously you see there's a lot of health benefits to fasting, but now we're going to move into the next one, which was convenience and increased productivity. Okay, so this next section would be convenience. This is actually one of the reasons why years ago I chose to adopt intermittent fasting. And we'll get more into that in a little bit here. So, number one, there's less time preparing food. Number two, there's less time eating food. Seems pretty obvious, right? You're eating less meals a day. There's less time actually preparing food and eating the food and worrying about where you're going to get the food. Then this bottom one here, it works with the sympathetic nervous system rather than against it. So in your autonomic nervous system, you have two branches. You have your parasympathetic branch and you have the sympathetic branch. So the sympathetic branch is commonly referred to as the fight or flight branch of your autonomic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system, on the other hand, is known as your rest and digest system. So when we are at work and during the day, there tends to be more stress in our lives, right? The sun comes up, cortisol starts elevating, we hit the ground running, grab that cup of coffee or whatever, and the stress begins. We're figuring out problems, or we're working hard with our bodies or whatever it is. Stress is elevated, right? So in this time, that's when your sympathetic nervous system is activated, right? But when we eat food, the parasympathetic nervous system, or rest and digest, is activated, right? So now you're releasing all these hormones such as serotonin and dopamine and things like that make you feel, I feel nice and relaxed. And in addition, when you eat a meal, there is less blood going to the muscles and to your brain because it's down there helping to digest the food that you just ate. So that's a lot of times why after eating a big meal, you'll feel sleepy or you feel tired. Tryptophan causes a very minimal amount of that, like Thanksgiving dinner, you're like, it's the tryptophan that's making me sleepy. It's usually just because you ate more food than you're accustomed to, and now you're like, I'm ready for a nap. So, and that's also the reason why a lot of times at work you eat your lunch, and then your productivity kind of goes down after lunch because you're digesting that food and you're kind of sleepy and stuff, and then all of a sudden you get home and you're like, okay, I'm ready to go now. I wish I had felt that way, mid-afternoon, right? So the reason for that being is that you are putting yourself in this rest and digest state when you should be in this fight or flight response because you're getting stuff done, right? Another thing that is harmful too is when you are under a lot of stress and your insulin is elevated, i.e. you're eating food, because every time you eat, insulin goes up and it will stay elevated for at least 3 hours, sometimes even as long as 6 hours, depending on what foods combinations, and the amount of food that you ate, right? So when that insulin is elevated, cortisol is going to have the tendency to increase fat storage and decrease insulin sensitivity, which that double whammy there, increase fat storage, right? But as I've talked about in another video of mine, that cortisol isn't necessarily a bad guy. Actually, cortisol can help you burn fat depending on its association with hormones. So when it's associating with insulin, it's going to tend to increase fat storage, right? When it's associating with human growth hormone and testosterone, though, it's going to increase fat burning. So how do you increase your human growth hormone and testosterone? Well, studies have shown that after 24 hours of not eating, that human growth hormone in men goes up by something like 2,000 to 3,000%. In women, it's not quite as substantial. It's about 1,500%, right? So right there you have it. If you want to increase human growth hormone and rapidly accelerate your fat burning, fasting is a good way to do that. It's also going to help minimize the negative effects that stress is having on your body. Now, of course, what you are eating when you're not breaking your fast is going to have a big influence on this as well, and we'll get into that later on in this video. So I think I've basically covered everything that I wanted to cover on this topic. Let's go on to the next one, which you've probably all been waiting for, and this is probably the number one reason why people do choose to do a fasting routine is to try to lose some weight. So we'll get into that in the next clip. All right, so for weight loss, first let's preface this by saying that the prerequisite for weight loss is that you need to be in a calorie deficit, right? So there's nothing particularly magical, although there are some additional benefits that may make staying in a calorie deficit easier while you're doing this than, say, traditional just calorie restriction. However, the main benefit of intermittent fasting is that it allows you to easily hack off a large chunk of the calories that you get during the day because you're reducing the amount of time in which you can eat. All right, but other than that, fasting is not this magical thing, right? So, first and foremost, you need a calorie deficit if you want to lose weight. Now, there are things such as like inflammation, food sensitivities, hormonal issues and stuff that can play a role in weight loss as well. But that's beyond the scope of this video. We're going to stick to just the simple calories in versus calories out. When you're in a calorie deficit, you're going to lose weight, right? Okay, so one of the benefits of for weight loss is it's going to stabilize your blood sugar. So when your blood sugar gets stabilized, that's going to help you reduce your hunger and cravings. You're going to not feel like you have to eat all the time because the blood sugar is stabilized. Also, as we talked about previously, that when insulin is elevated, fat burning is suppressed. So when you're eating all the time, the insulin is elevated, prevents you from burning and tapping into your fat stores. When you're not eating, insulin decreases, human growth hormone goes up, and fat burning increases. All right, this is actually, before I go on, one of the reasons why a lot of times people who are very obese and have insulin resistance, they don't have to be diabetic, but if they have insulin resistance, it can actually make it more difficult for them to lose weight with calorie restriction than a person who is of normal weight and high insulin sensitivity. That's why sometimes like I'm eating less and stuff, and I still can't lose the weight, right? Well, a lot of the times it's because of that elevated blood sugar levels and decreased insulin sensitivity as a result. And actually fasting can help with that by balancing out the blood sugar and increasing your ability to use fat as a fuel source instead of sugar and things like that. So fasting can actually help those people more effectively lose weight. So reduce hunger and cravings. We kind of touched on that before. When your blood sugar is stabilized, you're going to have less cravings for different things. You're also going to have reduced hunger, which will help you eat less, which is the point of when you're trying to lose weight. Fat burning, we talked about that already as well. And so I'm not going to go too much further into that one. Metabolism. Okay, so this one right here is a big misconception that still goes around, but it was just proved many years ago. So probably, I don't know, back in about, would that be 2006, when I started first looking into nutrition and bodybuilding and that kind of stuff. The prevailing thing was eat multiple little meals throughout the day because it will keep your metabolism humming. Metabolism will be going faster, right? That's not actually the case. Your metabolism pretty much has a basic set rate, but you can affect metabolic efficiency and things like that. Basically what happens is when you are eating, every time you eat, you're going to have a thermogenic effect. So the thermogenic effect is basically the energy required to digest the food that you just ate. So on average, it's about 10% of the total calories that you ate are going to get burned up just trying to digest those calories. Now, if you're eating protein, more of those calories are going to get burned. So like 30% of the calories from protein get burned just in the digestion process. Now with fat, it's much lower. So if you combine fat, carbs, and protein together, you're going to get that net 10% thermic effect every time you eat. But that's not an increase in your metabolism, that's just normal thermogenesis. Now, if you take all those same little meals, combine them into 3 meals, or even one big meal, you just get a much bigger thermic effect after you ate. And indeed, this tends to be the case with people who follow an intermittent fasting protocol for a prolonged period of time, is your metabolism actually, or metabolic efficiency and the amount of food that you can eat and not gain weight, tends to increase. This actually happened for me. Going from that eating multiple little meals throughout the day and then doing the fasting thing, actually my digestion improved and things like that. The other thing that's going to be negative about eating multiple little meals throughout the day is that every time you eat, insulin is elevated, right? So as we talked about before, when insulin is elevated, fat burning is suppressed. So by eating all these little meals throughout the day, you're basically not allowing yourself to go into fat burning. And then another point I'd like to make is that every time you're elevating insulin as well, you're also increasing your hunger. But it's like you're just whetting your appetite but never fully feeding yourself. So you're keeping yourself hungry all the time, but because you have to eat less calories because you're trying to lose weight, now you're trying to eat all this, you're essentially torturing yourself, and your hunger keeps on increasing. In fact, there was a study done years ago where they compared a group of young men, 20s, 30s, who did calorie restriction versus a fasting protocol. And what they found was that the men who did the calorie restriction, after a while, they just got so hungry that all they could focus on was eating food, and they became lethargic. They didn't want to move and do stuff, and so then the energy that they're expending throughout the day decreases too, because they're starving, right? Now, there are a couple reasons for this are because by continually eating little meals throughout the day but not feeding yourself enough, you never transition from a sugar burning state or carbohydrate burning state into a fat burning state. But now you're not giving yourself enough of that fuel source because you're restricting the calories. So over time, your metabolism actually, or your metabolic efficiency, whatever you want to call it, your body goes into conservation mode and you are burning less calories because they perceive less coming in. Now, on the other hand, the guys in the study who did the fasting protocol, they actually were able to sustain this practice longer and achieve much better results than the calorie restriction. And the reason for this is that when you go fasting, that you actually, when your blood sugar lowers down and stuff and you run out of those carbohydrates because you haven't eaten in a while, your body starts tapping into fat for energy, right? And that can be dietary fat or body fat. So when you, like even the most lean person has enough fat on their body to go an entire day without eating, right? Or multiple days without eating. And so since there's all this fat available and your body has tapped into fat as a fat burning as a fuel source, your body doesn't perceive the need to restrict, to conserve on energy because it's already burning fat and there's an ample supply of it. Now, when your body fat gets lean enough, then the hormone leptin will kick in and it'll be like, hey, hold on a second, we're getting too lean, we're in the starvation mode and stuff like that, and then it will, increase hunger. And this is why a lot of times bodybuilders, after dieting down really hard for a show, and they get down to that 4% body fat, which is unnaturally lean, they will be eating everything in sight after that. I actually experienced this too. When I got really, 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 really lean, I could eat and eat and eat, and I was full, but my body still felt like it was starving because my fat levels weren't at a, level where my body felt comfortable. So, right there's some of the advantages to fasting over just simple calorie restriction for losing weight. All right, now that I've laid all this stuff out, now we're going to go into some tips that you can use to make sure that you're optimizing and getting the most out of your intermittent fasting routine. Because as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, simply just not eating and then just eating a bunch of food at the end of the day, a lot of people already do that. And yet a lot of those people are very overweight and stuff, right? So it is important how you're breaking your fast and what you're eating when you break the fast. It's not just okay, because I didn't eat anything here, now I can just eat whatever I want at the end of the day. No, if you eat the wrong foods, it can actually backfire and make you gain weight and make you less healthy and decrease productivity and take away all the benefits of fasting if you're eating the wrong things when you break your fast. All right, so here we're going to get into how to actually make intermittent fasting an effective weight loss strategy, as well as optimizing your productivity and your performance at work. So, very important here. Number one, before you get into something like intermittent fasting is not a license to just go out and eat whatever you want just because, hey, I didn't eat anything during the first part of the day, so now I can just eat whatever I want and it'll compensate for whatever I didn't eat earlier on. Bad way to look at it. You still want to eat a balanced diet. So find a balanced diet. Now there's different ratios, right? You can eat, 70% carbohydrates, 10% fat, and 20% protein. That would be one breakdown. You could eat, 40% protein, 30%, or 40% carbs, 30% protein, 30% fat, 50, percent, carbohydrates, 40% protein, and 10% fat, or something, any of those lines. But figure out a good balance that works for you. Make sure you get all the different food groups, and I would highly recommend, if your goal is to lose weight, protein. Protein needs to be key. So if you figure out your body weight in pounds, divide your body weight in your lean body weight. So get a body fat assessment, figure out how much of you is lean weight, take that lean weight, divide that by 4 or 5, less if you're a girl, or more if you're a large man, and that's how much protein you should be having every time you're eating, right? Or how much you should have when you break your fast, right? And then build everything else around it. Include some vegetables, have a starch. If you need it, have a little bit of, a sweet, I prefer stick with some fruit. If you want to, every once in a while, it's not bad to have a little bit of processed sugar. You don't need it, but it's all right. Reduce your carbs first. So before you go into the fast, first, make sure you're getting those balanced meals first before you start fasting, right? Get good at that. Get used to eating whole, natural foods in balance. Then, what you want to do is you want to reduce the carbs at the meals that you intend to eventually eliminate in that time where you're not going to be eating. Start reducing the carbohydrate intake of those meals. This will make it easier to transition into full-blown fast, because you'll become more efficient at burning fat by not having it there. So you could eat something more of almost like paleo type diet, right? So you have chicken and avocado with some broccoli or something like that, or have a salad with some olive oil and some eggs or things like that, and then just skip the rice or the potato, the bread, those things, and the fruit at those meals. The next thing that you want to do is remove one meal at a time. So start by either reducing or cutting in half the size of the meal, or removing one meal. So the first one that's usually easiest for most people is breakfast, especially if you ate enough for dinner. You wake up in the morning, you shouldn't eat anything for breakfast, right? So you can remove that meal, and then once that becomes pretty simple to do and you become accustomed to it, then you can remove another meal. So skip lunch, right? Until you hit that window, where you want to be fasting, right? Break your fast. And then the next thing and this is super, super crucial, because I see a lot of people when they're doing their fasting, and this is one of the big mistakes that they make. First thing you want to do, you've been fasting a long time, you want to prevent your muscles from breaking down because they don't have enough food, right? You want to keep yourself strong, and one of the key things is when you are not getting enough calories, you're going to need at least as much protein and possibly more protein to maintain what is called a positive nitrogen balance. When you have enough carbohydrates and fat, the insulin and the carbs and then the fat helps you maintain your muscle mass, and you don't need as much protein. But if you're not getting enough of those, you want to make sure that you're getting enough protein, otherwise your body's going to lose fat and it's going to lose muscle mass at the same time. You just end up as a smaller version of what you were before, but weaker. And that's not what we want to achieve. We want to get lean, we want to stay strong. So, super, super crucial, break your fast with protein, have your protein first. And like I said, you broke that down into 3 to 6 little servings, and that's how much protein you should start that meal with. Have a little bit of fat with it too. So if you wanted to break your fast, have a little bit of eggs. If you're going for a more prolonged fast, you probably want to break your fast with a more lower fat option, simply because it's easier to digest. But if you're just doing the intermittent fasting in maybe 16 hours and you haven't eaten and stuff like that, or 12 hours and you haven't eaten, then having a little bit of fat with that should be completely fine. The next thing you want to do is you want to have some vegetables. Have a mixture of have some cooked vegetables, have some raw vegetables. The longer you've been fasting, you should probably start with the cooked vegetables because they're easier to digest. But having some raw foods in your diet is also very beneficial for digestive health and just health in general. Make sure you're getting those vegetables. That's the very next thing that you should be eating after you have your protein, right? Then you can probably have a little bit more protein, or you can have the starch or the fruit and the sugar afterwards. And I would order it in that way. I'd have the starch, the complex carbohydrates first, then the simple sugars at the very, very, very last. And that's only if you feel like you need it. Now, if you've ate, your protein, your healthy fats, and your veggies, and you feel like, hey, I want some more protein, go ahead and have some more protein, right? Your body will tend to tell you what you need, especially after your blood sugar has been stabilized. You can sometimes, if you have a lot of excess weight you're carrying, you may not need that much carbohydrates initially, and then as you start getting leaner, you'll start having to add those carbohydrates back in. Now, after you've eaten that balanced meal, so starting with the protein, the veggie and the fat, the veggies, and then the starch, and maybe possibly some sugar. If you're still hungry, go ahead and have some more protein and just have that started over in that order and have another meal like that if you're still hungry. Now, another thing after fasting, and you should be drinking a lot of water while you're fasting, is when you become more thirsty than hungry. That's a good indicator that you should stop eating, and that's, never stuff yourself to capacity, but you don't have to worry too much about the calorie content on this as well. As long as you're eating the right foods and listening to your body, it'll generally tell you how much food that you need. That's another beauty of fasting. All right, so we covered all that. That's kind of the main points that I wanted covered on how to make sure that your fasting is going to be effective for you. Now I'm going to get into a couple bonus things on some supplements that you can take to help improve your health while you're doing your fast. So we'll get into that next. All right, so now we're going to get into the final stage of the video here, talking about some little add-ons or bonuses to help you get even more out of your fasting and kind of capitalize on a lot of those health benefits that we talked about at the very beginning of this video. So number one, not necessarily a supplement, but essential for life, and something that you're definitely going to want to get plenty of while you're fasting. Drink plenty of water. So you don't have to drink this amount of water, but you may find that while you're fasting, it becomes fairly easy, especially if you are walking or doing anything like that while you're exercising or while you're on your fast. It'd be easier to drink water. So aim for half your body weight in ounces of water per day. And again, you don't have to force yourself to drink more water, but have that amount of water available so that if you do feel thirsty, you can get all the water that you need. There are things like dry fasting and stuff like that, but I'm not going to go into that here because I haven't personally tried doing that. Fermented veggies. So the next thing is, and depending on what fast, I guess it is a food, but they're pretty low in calories and in fiber and stuff like that. And if you're not eating a lot of it, it shouldn't take you out of your fast too much. But fermented vegetables are a great form of pre and probiotics. Another thing which is great for your digestive health, so while you're allowing your digestion to rest and relax, having stuff like that can help boost the health of your digestive tract. Digestive enzymes. So as we get older, there's a certain enzyme pool in our body, right? So especially if you're not eating a lot of raw foods already, that anything that is cooked requires enzymes from your body to break down and digest. So taking a digestive enzyme, especially as you get older, can help aid in your digestion and your ability to assimilate nutrients better. Probiotics. So the next thing we want to look at is probiotics. That's just good bacteria. So find a good quality supplement for that. Make sure there's enough cultures and enough variety of cultures to help. Bone broth. So bone broth is high in collagen, also a little bit of glutamine and stuff. So those are things too. If you have leaky gut, it can help to heal the intestinal walls. So a great thing, again, while you are in that fasted state. Glutamine. You can take a glutamine supplement as well. It's great for helping to repair tissues in the body. And then the last but not least, minerals. So doing some minerals, particularly potassium, zinc, and magnesium, can help you to prevent getting cramps if you're going on a more prolonged fast. Also, these minerals are involved in a lot of different processes in your body, and so it's a good idea to keep on getting those minerals, especially since our water supply is usually depleted in minerals, because in the purification process, you have to get rid of a lot of the minerals and then add other things that aren't necessarily as helpful for our body. So I'd recommend too, getting a good quality water filter and then adding your own minerals in there. I will leave a link in the description to some minerals that I use to add to my water that I find very helpful. Alright guys, that concludes today's video. I hope that you found the information helpful and useful and cleared up a little bit of the misconceptions around intermittent fasting. If you did like the video, make sure you hit that like button. Also, if you'd like to see more content like this, be sure to hit the subscribe button down here in the bottom right hand corner of your screen or of this video. And we'll see you all next time for more health and fitness related information. Thanks guys for watching.